The first thing people noticed was not an announcement, not a statement, not even a denial. It was a name. Quietly, almost shyly, the name Yu Menglong began to appear again in places where it had been absent for a long time. Comment section here. Repost there. A fan account cautiously typing his name without replacing letters with symbols. 4 months, then years, silence had wrapped itself around his memory like a sealed room. And then, slowly, the door began to creak open. In China's digital space, silence is rarely accidental. When a public figure disappears from search results, when posts vanish seconds after being published, when entire discussions evaporate overnight, people understand what it means. Absence becomes a language of its own. In Yu Menglong's case, that absence was loud. It spoke of discomfort, of unresolved questions, of a story that did not fit neatly into the approved narrative. And so people learned to whisper. They spoke in metaphors, emojis, half-sentences. They remembered without naming. Yu Menglong was not just an actor to his fans. He was a presence that felt intimate, familiar, human. His on-screen roles carried a softness that contrasted with the harsh pace of modern celebrity culture. He smiled in ways that felt unguarded. He played characters who loved deeply, suffered quietly, and lingered in memory long after the screen faded to black. When news of his death broke, the shock traveled fast, but the explanations did not. Official words arrived quickly, neat and contained, but they did not soothe the ache or answer the questions that immediately surfaced in the hearts of those who followed him. What followed was not open debate, not public investigation, not collective mourning. What followed was erasure. His name became difficult to type. Posts were deleted. Videos disappeared. Fan pages were frozen or wiped clean. For many, this sudden digital death felt almost as painful as the physical one. In a world where memory now lives online, being erased twice is a particular kind of cruelty. And yet, memory has a stubborn quality. It leaks through cracks. It survives in screenshots saved to private phones, in downloaded videos stored on old hard drives, in late-night conversations where people dare to speak freely. Fans outside China kept posting. International platforms carried discussions that domestic ones could not. The story fractured, scattered across borders and languages, but it did not vanish. What is happening now feels different. Not dramatic, not explosive, subtle. His name no longer triggers instant deletion in every context. Older content is being quietly reshared. Some posts stay up longer than before. Some comments remain untouched. This does not mean full openness. Does not mean answers. But in a tightly controlled environment, even small shifts feel seismic. This slow reappearance has sparked a complicated mix of emotions. Relief because remembering no longer feels entirely forbidden. Fear because nothing feels guaranteed. Curiosity because people wonder why now. Why allow the ghost to return? Why loosen the grip just enough for his name to breathe again? One theory is fatigue. Total erasure requires constant enforcement, and enforcement is never perfect. Another is pressure. Stories that refuse to die can become heavier than stories that are addressed. Silence can backfire, feeding speculation instead of calming it. When people are denied information, they do not stop asking questions. They simply ask them elsewhere, louder, with more imagination filling the gaps. Yu Menglong's case became a mirror reflecting something larger than one life. It exposed the fragile relationship between public trust and official narratives. Many people did not necessarily believe every rumor or theory that circulated. What unsettled them was the lack of transparency. When only one explanation is permitted and all others are punished, belief does not grow. Suspicion does. In the absence of open discussion, the internet did what it always does. It imagined. Some theories were extreme, others emotional, others rooted in genuine concern and unanswered details. Each new deletion, each detained rumor-monger, only deepened the sense that something was being hidden, even if what was hidden was simply uncertainty itself. The gradual return of his name does not erase the damage done by years of silence. But it does change the atmosphere. It allows a different kind of conversation to begin, one less frantic, less desperate. Fans are no longer shouting into a void. They are speaking cautiously, testing boundaries, measuring how far they can go without being pushed back. What's striking is how careful people still are. Posts often carry disclaimers. Words like allegedly, in my personal feeling, may be wrong appear repeatedly. This is not the language of free expression. It is the language of survival. It shows how deeply censorship reshapes thought, teaching people not just what not to say, but how to say nothing while still trying to say something. There is also grief here, unresolved and suspended. Mourning requires space. Needs time, rituals, shared remembrance. When mourning is interrupted, it becomes frozen. Many fans describe feeling as though they were never allowed to say goodbye properly. The return of Yu Menglong's name reopens that wound, but it also offers a chance to finally tend to it. Some fans have begun sharing memories rather than questions. Favorite scenes, lines from dramas, behind-the-scenes moments that once made them smile. This shift is powerful. It reframes him not as a controversy, but as a person. It pulls him out of the shadow of speculation and places him back into the light of lived experience. Still, the ghost metaphor lingers. Yu Menglong's presence feels spectral because it exists in fragments. No full picture, no official reckoning, no collective closure. He appears in glimpses, in echoes, in moments where the past brushes against the present. And ghosts by nature ask something of the living. They demand acknowledgement. For the system that once tried to erase him, allowing his name to resurface may be a calculated risk. Controlled remembrance is safer than uncontrolled obsession. A softened approach can redirect attention from unanswered questions toward nostalgia. Whether intentional or not, this shift changes the emotional temperature around the case. But memory is not so easily managed. Once people begin to remember openly, they also begin to ask again. Gently at first, then more firmly. Not necessarily accusing but seeking understanding. What happened? Why were we not allowed to talk? Why did silence feel like the only response? Yu Menglong's story sits at the intersection of celebrity culture, state control, and human grief. It reveals how fame does not protect against erasure, and how love from fans does not guarantee truth. It also shows how digital spaces have become modern battlegrounds for memory itself. Who gets remembered? Who gets forgotten? Who decides? Outside China, discussions have never fully stopped. But they often lacked emotional weight without domestic voices. Now, as those voices cautiously re-emerge, the story gains depth. It becomes less about outsiders speculating and more about insiders remembering.
The crack did not arrive with noise. There was no trending hashtag, no viral explosion, no dramatic announcement reclaiming Yu Menglong's name. Instead, it appeared the way cracks usually do, quietly, almost politely, as if asking permission. A single comment stayed up longer than expected. A fan video survived the night. A search result returned something other than silence. These were small things, but in an environment built on control, small things feel enormous. People noticed immediately. Not because they were told to notice, but because they had trained themselves to watch. Years of disappearance had sharpened attention. Fans had learned the rhythms of deletion, the timing of bans, the telltale signs of content about to vanish. So when something did not vanish, it felt strange, suspicious, hopeful. Screenshots began circulating in private chats. "Is this staying up for you too?" someone asked. Another replied, "Yes, I refreshed. It's still there." This was how confirmation worked now, not through public agreement but through whispered verification. The wall had not been removed, but a brick had loosened. The emotional impact of that loosened brick was immediate. For some, it brought relief so sudden it felt overwhelming. For others, it stirred anger long buried. Why now? Why after so much silence? Why after people had been warned, punished, scared into forgetting? The return of Yu Menglong's name did not just revive memory, it revived everything that had been suppressed along with it. Scenes from the past resurfaced in people's minds. The day they first discovered his dramas. Late nights watching episodes alone, feeling strangely understood by a character who seemed gentle in a world that rarely rewards gentleness. The interviews where he spoke softly, choosing words carefully, as if aware that even sincerity could be risky. These memories had never disappeared, but they had been hidden, tucked away like forbidden letters. Censorship does more than remove information. It reshapes emotion. It teaches people to doubt their own curiosity, to question their right to ask, to shrink their grief into something manageable and private. When Yu Menglong's name vanished, many fans learned to grieve in isolation. They mourned quietly, unsure who else was still mourning too. Now, with the crack widening just enough, those isolated griefs began to recognize each other. A comment saying, "I still remember him," received replies instead of deletion. Hearts appeared. Candle emojis. Short phrases heavy with meaning, "Me too." These exchanges may look small from the outside, but for those involved they felt like reunion. The wall of censorship had forced remembrance underground. What is underground, however, does not die. It grows roots. It becomes resilient. By trying to erase Yu Menglong completely, the system may have unintentionally preserved him in a purer form, untouched by official revision, frozen in the authenticity of fan memory. As his name re-emerged, it did so without official framing. There was no carefully crafted narrative guiding how people should feel. This absence gave the moment an unusual rawness. People were not being told what to think. They were remembering on their own terms. This is where the danger lies for systems built on control. Memory without instruction is unpredictable. It does not always align with intended conclusions. It raises questions even when it tries not to. And questions, once allowed, are difficult to contain. Some posts focused on censorship itself rather than the case. Why was his name blocked for so long? Why couldn't we talk about him? These are not accusations, they are reflections. But reflections can be sharp. They turn attention outward, toward the mechanism rather than the individual. And once people begin examining the mechanism, the conversation changes. There is also a generational aspect to this return. Younger users who encountered Yu Menglong's name only as a forbidden reference are now curious. They search not with grief but with wonder. Who was he? Why did everyone go quiet? What kind of presence could be erased so completely, and yet remembered so fiercely? This curiosity breathes new life into the story. It shifts it from tragedy to inquiry. An inquiry is powerful. It does not demand immediate answers, but it refuses permanent silence. The ghost metaphor becomes more vivid here. Yu Menglong is not haunting out of malice. He is appearing because something unfinished remains. Ghosts in stories return when truth has been buried, when names are left unspoken, when endings are denied. His return through digital cracks mirrors that narrative perfectly. Behind the scenes, content moderators and algorithms still hover. Nothing is fully safe. Posts can still disappear. Accounts can still be warned. Everyone knows this. The caution remains visible in language choices and emotional restraint. But fear has shifted slightly. It no longer feels absolute. And when fear weakens even a little, expression grows bolder. What makes this moment especially striking is its ordinariness. There is no protest, no mass movement, just people talking, remembering, sharing fragments of a life that once brought them comfort. In a heavily controlled environment, ordinary human connection becomes quietly radical. The cracking of censorship walls rarely looks dramatic from the inside. It looks like hesitation, inconsistency, gaps. And those gaps invite possibility. They suggest that control is not omnipotent, that rules can bend, that silence is not inevitable. Yu Menglong's reappearance has also sparked conversations about other erased names, other silenced stories. If one ghost can return, others might too. This is how memory spreads, not as rebellion but as recognition. One name reminds people of another. One crack leads eyes to search for more. Yet there is a fragile balance here. Too much pressure and the wall could be reinforced. Everyone knows this. The community moves carefully, like someone stepping onto thin ice, listening for cracks but still moving forward. What remains undeniable is this: the attempt to erase Yu Menglong failed. It delayed memory, distorted it, pushed it into shadows, but it did not destroy it. His name carries weight precisely because it survived suppression. Because it returns not as a headline, but as a whisper growing steadily louder. The return of a ghost is never about the past alone. It is about the present confronting what it tried to ignore. As Yu Menglong's name continues to appear, linger, and circulate, it forces a quiet reckoning. Not with official statements or definitive truths, but with the simple human need to remember. The wall is still there. Tall, watchful. But it is no longer seamless. And through that imperfect surface, memory keeps slipping through, scene by scene, name by name, refusing to stay buried.